What's up, everybody? Dev Del Molino back here today. It's a beautiful, wonderful, sunny day out here in Seattle, Washington. It's early, and I am ready to do a review of this new Joey Badass album, All-American Badass. Joey Badass, New York born, 22 years old, double entendre monster, releasing his second full-length studio album, and I believe his fifth project overall so far. The first time I listened to Joey Badass was in 2012 when his debut mixtape 1999 had come out. Now, when Joey first broke onto the scene, it was obvious kind of the way he was influenced by that classic blueprint of New York hip-hop, sort of that golden age of hip-hop sound. Now, this is a style that still appeases a very large group of hip-hop fans, and there's no doubting that Joey emulates this style extremely well and is able to put his own kind of contemporary spin on it. You know, just for me personally, what I enjoy seeing the most is artists carving new trends and new phases, doing things that people just haven't thought of yet, and bringing those ideas into the world of hip-hop. And still standing today, 1999 is one of my favorite mixtapes to ever drop. It's just that there is a preset formula to how this mixtape was made, and there is, like I said, that framework in place, and I think that's worth making note of when you compare it to other artists and other albums. So here we are, it's 2017, 5 years later, and I gotta say that I love what Joey has decided to do with himself as an artist and All-American Badass as an album. And I'm just gonna start things off by saying this. I think in the big picture of this album, the creative direction that was taken, the message that's put into place, and Joey Badass's presence as an artist are near flawless in my opinion when it comes to All-American Badass. And in the context of today's world of hip-hop, where New York has really been suffering in the movements of the mainstream since, honestly, the 50 Cent days, Joey Badass is quite literally carrying New York hip-hop on his back. Joey really started to understand the platform that he now has to provide a very strong message, which he did on this album. He's also become a much more well-rounded artist in the way that he can appease a large quantity and a wide variety of hip-hop fans amongst our community. And he's been able to do all of this without alienating the people who originally loved his kind of New York and golden era style of sound. So again, when it comes to the big picture of this album, I really can't pick a bone with a single aspect of All-American Badass, and that alone impresses me a lot. Now, when it comes to the specifics of this album, you know, it's not like a Kendrick Lamar level type project where K-Dot, you know, is really vivid and revealing, elaborate, detailed, you know, with his storytelling. Now, I'm giving it that comparison to say that, you know, All-American Badass isn't gonna like rack your brain with concepts, but there are a lot of moments on here that leave you with things to kind of chew on for a little while. Babylon featuring Chronix is a really good example of this. In this song, Joey analyzes and discusses the dynamic that exists between black people and higher figures of authority, whether that be police officers, the police force, prison systems, or even just the government in general. Now, this song has some very good attention to detail in the way that he starts off his first verse by voicing his frustration with the fact that it appears that black people are just being hunted in this country. And as he goes through delivering this verse, he's impassioned and like angry to the point of like yelling this verse, and it fits the sentiment of the lyrics like perfectly. And on the second verse, he kind of switches his content a little bit from voicing frustration to really kicking game to the listener. And what he does on this verse is sort of corral himself back in and relax his tone and start really delivering more poignant remarks. Again, fitting the sentiment of the lyrics, and then by that, adding another dimension to the track itself. There's a line on this second verse that really resonated with me, and it's when Joey says that, you know, blacks are still hanging from one of three branches on this American tree: legislative, judicial, or executive. And the beauty of this album is that not every song is like this, in that there are songs on here like Rockabye Baby and Ring the Alarm, in which, you know, we kind of do away with the heavy topics, and we really just add to the rebellious and abrasive nature of the album. Rockabye Baby is definitely the more militant and seismic of the two of these records. He talks about gang affiliations and violence, something that many other artists do with way less intention. The way that Joey spits it is so rebellious, and it kind of adds to, like I said, the militant and revoltive nature of this song. It's sort of this like hood uprising. Everything about this track is so totally chaotic, but simultaneously somehow totally under Joey's control. Now, for my favorite track on here, Ring the Alarm, Joey kind of goes back to something that we would definitely hear on, you know, his previous projects. Now, there's a lot of pro era on this track. Chuck Strangers does the beat, Kirk Knight and Nick Caution are featured on here, as well as Ellis Darko from the Flatbush Zombies. Now, the first thing that I noticed, especially on the first part of this track, is this sounds a lot like something that would show up on Mobb Deep's The Infamous. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Joey was intentionally paying homage to them, seeing as they really did shape a lot of the New York hip-hop sound with that album. Now, in the instrumental and particularly the chorus, Joey really evokes kind of the toned down, direct, confrontational, very gritty nature that, Mobb Deep is well known for. Also very reminiscent of Mobb Deep, Joey really fits a lot of words into the chorus here, much more than your average 8-bar hook. Then the song kind of transitions into this point where the flows start getting like airtight and you feel like you're in this just crazy cipher. In this section of the track, Kirk and Nick actually share a verse together and just go bar for one another, and it's one of the biggest highlights I think on this entire LP. Then Michi Darko kind of comes in with this really colorful bridge. As always, I find myself enamored with the way his voice works on this track, and I love how he comes on saying, this is a stick-up. Ocean's 47. And again, if you notice, I'm kind of describing how this song sort of shifts gears at multiple points throughout the track. I think more so than any other track on this album, this song has the most replay value because of its multiple dimensions. As for the singles on this record, that being Devastated and Land of the Free, again, I have to go back to commending Joey on how well balanced his music has become. Really, Devastated kicked everything off for this album, and by far, it is Joey's biggest cut to date for the radio. And I think that's a song that really helped rope people in, especially for the second single being Land of the Free. A much more topical and heavy track in which Joey really tries to unveil the ugliness that kind of lies under the American way or the American dream. This song really goes in on the identity of black people in the United States of America, mass incarceration, and the systemic inhibition of Afro-American success in our country. And again, we're talking big picture here, but Joey decides to drop Devastated first, a really good radio single that ends up hooking in a lot of people to this album. Then after that, once people are listening, he drops Land of the Free that has this incredibly powerful and poignant message to it. And one of the biggest points of praise that I can give Joey on his lyrics on this album is that he's not just complaining about the problem or stating what the issue is. Joey is providing information and point of perspective along with a sense of urgency, a call to action within his messages. And I think it's something that is really resonating with a lot of people. And again, to emphasize, Joey is 22 years old and providing a message like this to so many people. And I think it's part of the reason why these singles seem to have been picked very wisely and strategically to a point of, I'm really impressed with the way that they handled the release of this album. Now, there are a couple tracks on here that when it comes to the specifics of the music, I definitely do have some critiques for a couple songs. If having to pick one, I would say that Why You Don't Love Me is easily my least favorite song on this album. I wouldn't even go as far as to say that this is a bad song. It's just that the instrumental kind of sits in this groove that is a little too cozy for my taste. Overall, this beat is just really sleepy, and it does a poor job of roping me into the song in a way that forces me to want to listen to what is actually a pretty good concept. On this song, Joey personifies the United States as Miss America, kind of this woman that he's in an abusive relationship with. As Joey tells it, Miss America is always treating him as if he's ugly, as if he is unequal to her, and is consistently downplaying what makes him beautiful and special. Again, I think this song has very good salvageable elements to it. It's just that the instrumental kind of sours it from the get-go. The other song on here that is actually kind of meh to me is Super Predators. Again, I think this instrumental has the same issue in that it's just a little sleepy for me and there's not quite enough going on to kind of entertain me for the entire track. I really do think this comes down to a dynamic of personal taste though, because I've had a lot of people tell me this is their favorite record on the album. And I can definitely see why people like this song and particularly the instrumental. It's definitely just New York's bread and butter style of beat. Kind of sunny, blissful, definitely boom bappy, and when you have someone like Styles P on a record like this, you're definitely going to want to go back to, that classic New York sound, and I understand why they chose that direction for the song. Speaking of which, the Styles P verse is of course awesome and, is a great fit for the album. So yeah, it's just for me a song that is okay. It's not good, definitely not great, but again, I could see why other people like it. So even with those criticisms in mind, this album for me is pretty fantastic. Joey Badass is fantastic on this album. The music fan in me is proud to see the way that Joey has grown as an artist over these last 5 years. The American and the person in me is excited to see how powerful a young black man's voice can be in today's society. Boom! Adjectives. My 3 for this album are, first one, well adapted. Again, I know I've been kind of beating this sentiment over the head a little bit with this review, but the music here is diverse. Joey himself is a versatile artist on this album, and again, he's done an incredible job of appeasing a large quantity of, hip-hop listeners with this album. I haven't really heard a lot of people say that they didn't like this album. Second thing I would say about this album is that it is urgent. Joey speaks about the topics that he covers in this album in a way that suggests that the solution needs to be found sooner rather than later. And again, he implores the listeners, especially the young ones, to be the ones that are going to go out and make a difference and do it now. And I was talking to my roommate Nate about this album, and he really enjoyed this project. And the way that he described this album to me, I thought perfectly summed everything up. This album is hella woke. You know, again, Joey is just dropping a lot of really good knowledge on this album. And it seems like every time I go back and listen to the album and listen to the lyrics, I find new lines and new tidbits of things that I can chew on and that prove to be insightful. So yeah, solely my thoughts. I love this album. I want to hear what you guys thought. I know a lot of you really enjoyed this album. So let's talk favorite tracks. Lyrics specifically, if there's any other lines that you thought were particularly poignant, good, etc., let me know. Comment section. And that's all I got for you guys on today's review. Pretty soon you guys will be getting the second multi-review. We'll be talking some Kodak Black. We'll be talking some Mike Will Made It. We'll be talking some Freddie Gibbs. And you'll just have to catch me then, alright? Peace.